following podcast is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. So, kids shouldn't be listening. Elton says fuck and shit a lot. Sometimes fucking shit, but rarely does he advocate actually fucking shit. You get it. Enjoy the show.
Grumbling, moaning, bitching, whining. What do all of these things have in common other than being the focus of every AA meeting? I mean, come on, guys. Can't we just swap awesome drinking stories already? I mean, come on. No, I'm kidding. That was horrible. Yes, I know. I'm way ahead of you. I know. I'm already in hell. Believe me. It's just like they say it is. No, all those things I mentioned before have complaining in common. A thing we all hate so much, but we love it so much. We love bad reviews, not just about us. We love watching people yell at each other and other people, not just at us. And then there are the stories about people who complained and then got their way because we wished it was us. Man, do we love complaining. We love it so much that we often like to give special attention to those of us that do it really well. Those that vocalize their frustrations in a way that is both humorous, yet insightful, and, most important of all, not focusing on us. They're such a special breed, those people. We pay them just to complain about stuff and tell us about it. Tell us about the stuff they're complaining about. This episode is about someone who complained so well in such a unique way, he became a cultural icon because of it. Today, we talk about one of the legends in the Curmudgeon, Scrooge, cranky old man field, and why sometimes it pays to bitch.
Countdown for blast off. X minus 5, 4, 3, 2, X minus 1, fire.
Hey, I didn't see you there. Sitting through that cold open there. Come on in here and let me fondle your ear holes. Nope, that came out weird. I'm Elton, and this is Elton Reads a Book a Week, a podcast about the ins and outs, but not the outs of in. Oh, and books sometimes. My name is Elton, and I read a book a week. The book this time around is A Few Minutes with Andy Rooney by, Andy Rooney. Good old Andy Rooney, the godfather of troll, according to fastcompany.com. A great site that also said that Andy Rooney and his legacy of observational... A great site that also said that Andy Rooney and his legacy of observational journalism deserve credit for essentially creating the voice of the internet. I could see that, but I don't think Andy would have. You might remember Andy Rooney as the guy behind a desk whining about stuff on the news show 60 Minutes. And for those too young to know about what it is, oh boy, are you making me feel bad about myself being old. Fuck. Thanks a lot for that. I rescued this particular book from a "this shit is free because no one wants it" pile that was on a rack at the auction I usually score a lot of my books from. Not that I blame anyone for not jumping on this particular tome. A lot of people today don't remember who Andy Rooney was, and you know what? I get it. He was 92 when he died, and that was back in 2011. So it's been a while since he was still breathing and in the public eye. Hell, back then he wasn't at peak cultural relevance. Still, after 40 years of being on TV, basically doing the same gig every week, he's earned a place in entertainment history for sure. Back when I was growing up, he was already a staple in the cultural zeitgeist, though he was more peripheral to me back in the day. The show, 60 Minutes, which is a long-running American news magazine-style TV show that debuted on CBS in 1968 and was created by Don Hewitt. It basically pioneered the format of investigative journalism and in-depth interviews. All those Dateline shows and Frontline and other shit like that. Inside Edition, I think, was another one. They all owe their formats and feel, their vibe to 60 Minutes, for better or worse. Probably worse. But I digress. 60 Minutes is known for its iconic ticking stopwatch as its bumper thing before they cut to commercials and such. That was also in the background too sometimes, behind the guy, the narrator, announcer person, which was pretty cool actually. Anyway, the show is one of the most watched and influential news programs in television history. The setup is more or less that a team of correspondents are featured doing segments on various topics, from politics to culture. The show has been celebrated for its rigorous reporting and timeless storytelling, and it's received a ton of awards. It's won over 100 Emmy Awards alone. To this day, it continues to be a Sunday night staple of the TV landscape, though with how shows and stuff are consumed today, it's probably more for people with absolutely nothing better to do on Sunday than watch a news show. Though, to be fair, it's offered viewers impactful journalism for 50 years. So if you're going to cry about your loneliness on a Saturday night over a tub of Haagen-Dazs after taking a beating and earning a pint, that's a reference to a different episode. You should go listen to that too after this one. Regardless, if you've done all that, then 60 Minutes is probably the best show to cry during watching it. It's very well done, is what I'm saying. For decades, Andy Rooney was the guy who would usually close out the show with a grumbly rant about everyday shit. He would find some reason to complain about, and I mean literally just anything. He just regular everyday shit like chairs, ugliness, daylight savings time. Not kidding, daylight savings time. I've read the essays he read on air. Regular shit. When I was a kid, I considered this to be an adult show. Something boring, and it was about adult level shit that I could give a fuck about as a kid. At the kid level I was living at, could give a shit about it. I have since learned, after having become an adult myself along the way, that adults are, for the most part, completely full of shit. Not only that, but the adults are also winging it almost every day of our lives. Yep, not even kidding. The fact that the planet Earth has limped along this long with us at the helm is an absolute fucking miracle. And that realization gets more and more terrifying by the hour. When that realization hit me, I also gleaned a universal truth from it that I found no one wants to cop to. This has been true my entire life. My parents' entire lives. Their parents, all the way back. No one knows what they're doing. At all. Everyone is pretty much faking it. And we're all hoping no one calls us on it. Because none of us want to take the blame for all the fuckery. Still, back when I was a kid, when I was just worried about how to convince people I was a covert ninja spy and jealous of other kids' G.I. Joe collections, there was something about 60 Minutes that made me feel like maybe the adults who watched it and helped to make it and understood what they were talking about on it, that they might be the people who are capable of running things and were probably running things, and the reason why we weren't all dead. Like the actual adults in a room that is also full of people running into each other with their heads on fire, that they lit themselves to see if all the stuff they heard about fire was really true. I've since learned, of course, I've come to reasonably assess anyway that those kinds of adults, that would be the adults in the room that would tell everyone that had set themselves on fire, hey, you guys, you probably shouldn't have set yourself on. Guys, let me come here. Let me show you how to put it out. Guys, just stop. Stop running around. Stop running around. Stop. Lay down. Roll. Those people that would tell the people on fire what to do, I've since learned that those kinds of adults are riding unicorns somewhere on their way to playing a full set of racquetball with leprechauns. Leprechauns all named Otis. They're all named Otis. You know what I mean? And it's that realization that I feel only some of us ever reach, while the others think that once the unicorn riding adults beat those fucking leprechauns that are all named Otis, don't forget that. Once they beat them, those real adults are all coming back to show us what to do and set all this shit straight. They're going to make everything all right when they're done with that. For now, it's best to just tuck our head between our legs and not think about it too hard. It won't be long now. We're all going to be real dead real soon.
Jesus, kid.
Gosh, let's all bask in your sunshiny disposition, shall we?
Should I take the first suicide watch?
Oh, like you two don't know what I'm talking about. I'm moving on now. So, as a pre-realization child, back when I was a spy ninja, I'm telling you, I really was, I would see Andy Rooney do his thing on the rare occasions that I caught his segment on 60 Minutes, and I thought, that's how an actual adult bitches. They formulate a take on a subject, lay out their argument, explain it reasonably, and then just kind of fucking leave it there, like a fart in a room. Only they own it. You know what I mean? Like they fucking rip one and they're like, yeah, it was me. That was me. Deal with it.
Yikes. Just when you thought we were already in the deep end.
Elton, decaf. It won't hurt you, I promise.
Shush! That well-spoken argument-wielding adult would own that fart, is what I'm saying. Like an adult on a unicorn would. Anyway, all this weird nostalgia came rushing back to me when I saw Andy Rooney staring back at me from the cover of that book. That even though it was free and unwanted, I felt compelled to revisit Andy and see if he was still the real adult in the room, complaining about real adult shit the way real adults should, just leaving those fart truths lingering.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I hear it now, guys.
Oh good, the first step is admitting you have a problem.
Check and mate. I'll move on. It is a weirdly refreshing trip back to a grumbly land that time forgot when I read this book. They weren't simpler times, but holy shit were they different. And Andy's way of talking about them just fit right into that time. First, for those who don't really know why Andy would encapsulate a bygone era of the world that existed just actually not too long ago. It feels, again, Jesus, like centuries. Like millennia. It's best to start at the beginning. Andy Rooney, whose full name was Andrew Aiken Rooney, was an American writer, journalist, and television personality. He was born on January 14th, 1919 in Albany, New York, a city which, interestingly enough, a city which, interestingly enough, is the oldest continuous settlement in the original 13 English colonies. A fort was built here prior to 1614 in Albany. Andy Rooney. Andrew Aiken Rooney. Andrew Rooney. Andy Rooney, whose full name was Andrew Aiken Rooney, was born a dangerous, bloodthirsty New York infant with a mind full of murder on January 14th, 1919 in Albany, New York. You know, the city that's the capital of New York that isn't named New York, but is in the same state as New York. Albany must fucking hate New York City. New York, stealing all the fun and glory, while Albany is the ugly brother that keeps track of all the bills and makes sure the fun brother doesn't blow up the fucking house budget on Adderall and concert tickets. But yet, when people come over, the fun brother is the only one they want to hang out with. What's with your creepy loser brother, Albany, counting everything and sneering at us? Isn't this your house, New York City? I thought you owned it. There's Albany in the corner, grumbling. New York, just a fucking city. I'm the capital. I got way too into that. And I'm sorry for all the bloodthirsty stuff. That's from the episode Perfect. You should go check that one out later. Also, Albany is the oldest continuous settlement in the original 13 colonies. A fort was built there prior to 1614. Take that, New York City. Moving on. The son of Walter and Eleanor Rooney, his father was in the paper business, founding a company named Dunder Mifflin, whose office would be used as the setting for the NBC show The Office years later.
I understood that reference.
I figured you would.
And you can definitely stop right now.
I can definitely stop now. The Dunder Mifflin stuff was nonsense, of course. I'll move on. Again. The younger of two children, born to, depending on where you read the source, I wasn't clear on it. His dad was either a felt salesman or he was in the paper business, and a lovely lady who was a homemaker. Anyway, that was their jobs. I found it two different ways with the dad being a felt salesman and in the paper business. I don't know. Regardless, Andy Rooney entered the world, and so it began that upon that day, the gift of bitching was also born. For he exited the womb, stating clearly before everyone present there in the delivery room, before the doctors and nurses, he said, "Babies. Boy, do they have it easy. Everything taken care of. Nothing to do but fuss for this and that. Everything is just handed to them from birth. It makes them weak and full of entitlement. Why should they get all the titty milk? Do they ever think that maybe I might want some titty milk? Why don't they just get a job and earn that titty milk? I do like some titty milk." Nope. I'll just leave that there and move on again. From most accounts, Andy had a pretty wholesome childhood, where his parents, neighbors, and teachers learned quickly that he had a proclivity to bitch and complain. Oh, that Andy. He would turn on the wine spigot at the drop of a fucking hat. Once I even heard him go on for 2 hours about chairs. Goddamn chairs. For 2 fucking hours straight, said Ernest Flenderson, a former classmate. Okay. Flenderson didn't exist, but actually, yes. There's an essay in this book about chairs. No joke. I'll tell you about it in a bit. It's wild. It's just... How? Like, how would you even find something to bitch about chairs? Anyway, after his graduation from Albany Academy, which is a school that enrolls students from preschool age 3 to grade 12, and is the oldest day school for boys in New York State Capital Region. Now wait. What the fuck, Elton? All boys schools are kind of fucked up sexist exclusionary bullshit, wouldn't you say? I tend to agree. Time and time again, studies show diverse groups of race and sex are more efficient and productive than single-sex groups. When people are mixed together, they treat each other with more. They treat each other more equitably, and they also learn faster. Yeah, I get it. So you'll be glad to know that in July 2007, the Board of Trustees announced that the Albany Academy and Albany Academy for Girls, which was another, the girls' side. They would merge into the Albany Academies. So get off my back, imaginary belligerent listener. Just back off. Fucking people these days, hostile. It's just unneeded, even when you're imaginary. While at the academy, Andy would write for the literary magazine at Albany Academy, and also enroll in Munson's dancing school, hey, where all the boys had to wear white gloves so they wouldn't mar the girls' fancy dresses with clammy, gross hands as they shuffled through waltzes and foxtrots, because soap was rare, laundry was hard, and being weird was the norm. Plus, there were so many white gloves everywhere. Why wouldn't you wear them to not get other stuff dirty? It's stupid. Mrs. Munson's dancing school was also where Rooney met the great love of his life, future wife Marguerite Howard Rooney. Unfortunately, jumping ahead a little bit here, she would die in 2004 at 84 of heart failure. 84. It's a long time to live. They were married for 62 complaint-filled years. No, I don't know that. I'm sure they were happy. Known as Margie, she was a frequent subject in his columns, especially his memory pieces that mined a rich vein of nostalgia for the Albany of his youth. He preserved a mental street map with names and sounds and smells that he could still recall with humor and clarity and commit to print well into his 90s. Okay, so jumping back in time to Mr. Rooney's brush with dancing greatness. As it happens, he wasn't meant for white glove in his way to ruining dresses with dirty hand sweat. No, he was built for trying to keep balls away from men. That's right. His bulldog build and muscular energy were more suited to football, despite him working despite him working as a copper boy. A copper boy? What the fuck? Elton, calm down. Jesus Christ. Despite him working as a copy boy for the Knickerbocker News, a daily newspaper in Albany that was later absorbed by some media group or other in 1988 after the readership declined from its peak in 1972 and 83. Why did I bring this up? Because this is the shit I fall into when researching and writing these. Andy became co-captain of his football team at Albany Academy and was a starting lineman at Colgate University in Hamilton, New York later, which he attended, by the way, despite declaring that most college catalogs, quote, rank among the great works of fiction of all time, and that a student of lackluster intellect who could raise tuition money would find it, again, quote, almost impossible to flunk out, unquote. Boy, he played left guard on the football team, even though he was only 5'9" and 185 pounds. And he worked back then, during that time, for the weekly newspaper, the Colgate Maroon. He would continue writing from here on out for the rest of his life. He was initiated into Sigma Chi, or Chi, I don't know, C-H-I, Sigma, S-I-G-M-A, I don't know why, Chi, or Chi, C-H-I. He was initiated into that fraternity, Sigma Chi, before he was drafted into the United States military, or the United States Army, because I read that as military just now, because I'm stupid. He was drafted into the United States Army in August 1941. It was in the military that he would pursue a career in journalism. And how did he do that, by the way? Oh, of course, he fucking lied. Yep. The world was a wonderful place where you could just shortcut your way to a successful and lucrative career back then, simply by lying your ass off. God damn you, Internet, and your ability to quickly validate work histories. Damn you, Internet! Despite mulling over whether to register as a conscientious objector, which he didn't do, by the way. For those of us not familiar with the concept of conscientious objector, it is a person who is opposed to any form of military service. but they will be assigned to alternate service if they are drafted. The person whose beliefs allow them to serve in the military, but in a non-combatant capacity. And they will serve in the armed forces, but will not be assigned training or duties that include using weapons. They're usually placed with the Selective Service Alternative Service Program and match them up with local employers. COs jobs range from conscientious objectors jobs range from caring for the elderly to teaching, education and stuff. He didn't go the conscientious objector route, like I mentioned earlier. Instead, he got drafted and served in the artillery regiment, eventually going to Normandy, but on day 4. Not the worst day, but also a worse than bad day. They still hadn't fought off the German forces to a manageable distance, but they weren't getting cut down immediately upon arriving on the beach either. So Andy is doing what he's doing, plugging Nazis occasionally. Intense, of course. It's still a war, but like the JV squad war at this point, for him anyway. Like the big dangerous Nazis that were all bodybuilders had already been shredded by the good guy U.S. Army, British forces, Canadians, all those guys that stormed the beach. And Andy rolls in to deal with the weak Nazi towel boys or something. Thank God I'm not in war. I'd be fucking dead. So back at camp one day, or wherever young Andy Rooney, soldier boy, slept, barracks? Probably barracks of some kind. Yep, with stacks of bunk beds with soldiers on them, bitching. About all things war. I don't know where I'm going with this. Anyway, all those guys are heroes. For real. Anyway, Andy sees a flyer on the bulletin board. The official soldier bitching bulletin board. I don't know. As I mentioned before, he got the reporting gig by lying. The Stars and Stripes Weekly newspaper decided they wanted to print a daily version of their paper. So they sent the word out to all the troops looking for actual journalists and reporters to maybe apply for them, to apply with them and get jobs so they could put out the paper every day. So they put up flyers everywhere. Andy applied. He applied to the, he saw one of those flyers and applied, despite not being anything near a journalist. Other than writing for school newspapers, which does not count. Did you ever wonder why they even bother with job applications? I mean, really? You could just write down whatever you want and they never check it. Really, it's all about being in the right place at the right time. Take me, for instance. My application to be a journalist was easy. All I had to do was apply for the job during a global military conflict that resulted in roughly 200 Americans being killed per day. They didn't even bother asking for references. Job applications are a sham, I tell you. So, sorry, Andy Rooney. So Andy became a correspondent for the military newspaper Stars and Stripes during World War II, doing just that. Quote, "We were covering the air war in England. 8 or 10 reporters writing about the 8th Air Force. I met Walter Cronkite in London, and we traveled a lot together. Another great friend was Gladwin Hill, who was the Associated Press, who was with the Associated Press, later with the New York Times. And there was a man named Bob Post, who was the New York Times reporter," unquote. Sorry, I fucked that up so bad. Rooney wrote with Stars and Stripes for the remainder of the war, befriending fellow reporter Walter Cronkite. It never fails to blow my fucking mind how many famous people knew other famous people before either of them were famous. Andy was among the first journalists to visit the Nazi concentration camp Buchenwald a day after its liberation, recalling the horrible sights and overall horrors he saw. He said many times that it was an experience that deeply affected him and influenced his later work. Of course, I can imagine. In an interview, he told an anecdote about having a college professor back at Colgate who was a pacifist. Andy was really impressed by him. He got Andy to think that he might be a pacifist too, and that he didn't want to go to war and didn't think it was right. He even thought of going so far as to entertain registering as a conscientious objector because of that professor. When around the time he was being drafted, he thought because of his views that the professor had expressed so much that it affected him, he thought he might register as a conscientious objector, is what I'm trying to say. And then he walked through Buchenwald, and he thought back to that pacifist college professor and thought how he wished he could, quote, get that bastard by the hand and walk him through here with me and see if he was still a pacifist. And it's right here is where old Elton is going to piss off a lot of listeners. How? By voicing his opinion on a divisive topic. I would say that Andy Rooney took the wrong lesson away from Buchenwald and the war. I'll explain. I don't know who that professor was back in Colgate, or even if he was real. For all I know, he was some allegorical figure representing pacifism. For Andy, who knows? I can only guess at this shit, really. Still, in imagining this professor as a generic pacifist, it's reasonable to think that he probably accepted some form of restraint regarding dangerous people and such. Most pacifists accept the need to restrain dangerous individuals from harming others. That's according to the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Link in the description. Operators standing by. So, the lesson Andy seems to have gotten from witnessing the aftermath of the horrors of Buchenwald was that the war was justified and that any naysayers should be made to bear witness to disgusting inhumanity that the war helped stop. It seems logical on its face. I mean, when you're walking through it, I can't imagine anyone not thinking, thank God this horrible injustice was stopped. I mean, because of course. What I think his professor would have said to Andy after Andy called him a bastard, and to look and tell him the war wasn't justified, was to say, this war should never have gotten this far. These poor people and your fellow soldiers died because of inattention, laziness, and apathetic assholes who didn't stop a bunch of Nazi pricks from ever gaining traction in society long enough to start a fucking war and murder people in death camps. War's only real lesson is that you should have worked smarter and harder to prevent it. I'm glad Hitler was stopped, but I think he should have had his ass beat the shit out of in art school, or taken out behind a beer hall and beaten into a coma that he couldn't wake from, because he was an idiotic racist piece of shit with murder on his mind, not as a consolation prize after he got what he wanted. This shit happens time and again, and we never seem to figure out that war didn't actually stop anything. I mean, the disgusting atrocity of those death camps aside, Andy himself said he, quote, lost 3 or 4 close friends from the Albany Academy. There were about 22 in my class, and I think 4 of them were killed, unquote. Shit. Just on a selfish level, you would think that wanting to prevent wars by recognizing the sparks before the killing starts would be priority 1. If not just to prevent the death of people like his friends. Sorry. Feel free to argue with me with an email to eltonreadsabookaweek@gmail.com. End of listener shedding rant.
You pick the absolute worst times to plug your contact information. It's astounding.
But it gets plugged, doesn't it? It's better than not. You know what? I blame Hitler.
Always, always, always blame Hitler.
Exactly. Fuck that guy. Moving on. After victory was declared in Europe, Stars and Stripes assigned Mr. Rooney to cover Asia because it was figured that after all the Hitler warring, soldiers would be shipped off to do the same to the Japanese. That, of course, didn't happen. We just skipped to the end credits by using the nuclear bomb cheat code. So Andy's career ended right there. No, he was, of course, not among those affected by the annihilation of a large swath of the Japanese people in a nuclear hellfire, mind you. Of course not. Nope. The first use of a nuclear bomb on an unsuspecting population was just another lucky break for Andy and his military career. That ended his military career there. Every time God allows for the erasure of hundreds of thousands of people, he opens a window, I guess. Rooney was decorated with the Bronze Star Medal and Air Medal for his service as a war correspondent in combat zones during the war. After the war, Rooney worked as a freelance writer and a radio and television personality. He even tried his hand at comedy, writing for the popular radio turned television personality Arthur Godfrey. When he joined CBS News in 1949, he was a writer for the show Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts. By most accounts, his jokes fucking sucked. This is from an episode of that show, the Arthur Godfrey Show. This is one of Mr. Rooney's jokes. The favorite dish of the men from another planet who pilot the flying saucers is Venus Schnitzel. Yep. And then Godfrey moans at the bad joke after he says that on the he said that on the show. Now, could I do better? Let me try. Let me take a crack at it. Let me take a crack at it. Okay. Okay. Let me try to work my way into it. Okay. The favorite dish of the men from the planet who pilot the flying saucers is pussy.
You're goddamn right it is.
Jesus Christ, Alonzo, where the fuck? Oh my God. What? How? Why do you keep doing that? I thought you left.
Oh, hey, no, man. I just went out for some, Pop-Tarts and ketchup. Hey, did I ever tell you about Pop-Tarts and ketchup, man?
No.
What? I can't believe I told you. All right, so listen, Pop-Tarts, right? Wait, I'm being rude and so, okay, I should ask first. Do you want to know about Pop-Tarts and ketchup?
No, Alonzo.
Oh, all right, man. Well, long story short, man, Gordon Ramsay, that guy, he loves it, though now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure he was high at the time. Now wait, now that I think about it, I'm not even sure that was Gordon Ramsay. In fact, I'm pretty sure he said he was from Detroit originally, which doesn't make much sense. Still, man, he stole my fucking recipe, man. Never trust British chefs, man. You heard it here first. Never, ever trust British chefs, especially with Pop-Tarts. Oh, and ketchup. Yeah, just a heads up, man.
Wow. Moving on. He also wrote for numerous other television programs, including The Gary Moore Show and the CBS Morning News. He got to rub shoulders with the greats of CBS's golden era of news, like Edward R. Murrow, and of course his war buddy, Walter motherfucking Cronkite. He did all of that before settling into a partnership with newsman Harry Reasoner. Quote, I worked for Harry Reasoner for 8 or 10 years and wrote a lot of what he read. We were very good friends. I liked Harry a lot, and he obviously liked me, unquote. With Rooney as the writer, they collaborated on several news specials, including an Emmy-winning report on misrepresentations of Black Americans in movies and history books. He wrote an essay on doors. Andy Rooney did. He wrote an essay on doors in 1964 and continued with contemplations on bridges, chairs, and women. You can find a lot of these online. They're interesting if you want to find them. If you want to find them and search for Andy Rooney's documentary or something akin to it. They're an interesting glimpse into pre-internet diversion infotainment kind of stuff. I mean, a full-on hour about doors. Though being pre-internet, and the internet's bashing down and gatekeeping, the stuff is written and well-produced. However, buried under an ever-growing mountain of quality diversion material bestowed on us by the mother internet, it comes across as very dated and very mundane. I mean, when you can look up a video of people dressed as clowns firing guns for no reason, I mean, do you really need to see a well-written hour about doors? Still, I saw it, and I can say that it's weird, and it's good. Go check it out. Or, don't. That's an option. Then, and this is from a CBS transcript I found online, by the way. Some of the first-person quotes I used for Andy come from it, too. Quote, then, 60 Minutes creator Don Hewitt, desperate for some kind of postscript to the broadcast, decided to put Andy Rooney on the air. At least his shadow. End quote. Andy, anyway, the whole scene is at the very end of 60 Minutes. They would have two silhouettes facing each other, and they would argue points back and forth. This was post Vidal versus Buckley, when they debated on ABC during the Democratic National Convention in 1968, and the ratings blew up for them. So every network after that was trying to cash in on that newly discovered arguing ratings magnet. I'd go into it here, but I'll be covering it in a future episode. It's a pivotal moment in television history that basically changed the way news broadcasts cover politics, all the way up to the present day. There's a really good documentary about it called Best of Enemies, and a good piece from Politico that I'll link to in the description if you want to nerd the fuck out on it and learn about how fucked up our political coverage is now. The silhouette gag didn't last very long, and followed by a parade of contributors from Billy Graham to Art Buchwald. Whatever. Both of which I think were somewhat controversial in their day and are, in fact, now very, very dead at the moment. Then, the long-running point-counterpoint segment where someone representing the left would argue against someone representing the right about a topic or whatever. It was so culturally significant that it was famously parodied. It was famously parodied on Saturday Night Live with this bit between Jane Curtin and Dan Aykroyd. Jane represents the woman's side of a highly publicized divorce between actor Lee Marvin and his wife Michelle Triola, whatever. The legal case that would go on to legally establish and define palimony, by the way, a term that according to Investopedia means the payment of financial support from one party to another following the end of a relationship that is not legally recognized as a valid marriage. So here's a clip from Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin doing their thing.
Dan, times change, and so does the nature of relationships. People are reluctant to get married these days, and looking at divorce statistics, who can blame them? But the lack of a piece of paper does not necessarily mean the lack of a total commitment. A woman in this modern-day relationship may well give up all her own personal pursuits, as Michelle Marvin claims she did, to give her full support to her man's career. And Michelle Marvin is just asking that the courts recognize that reality. Dan, there's an old saying. Behind every successful man, there's a woman, a loving, giving, caring woman. But you wouldn't know about that, Dan, because there's no old saying about what's behind a miserable failure.
Jane, you ignorant slut. Bagged out, dried up slunk meat like you and Michelle Triola know the rules. If you want a contract, sign on the dotted line. Oh, but let's all shed a tear for poor Michelle Triola. There was only testimony that she had sexual intercourse over 40 times with another man while living with actor Lee Marvin. But I suppose that sort of fashionable promiscuity means nothing to someone like you, Jane, who hops from bed to bed with the frequency of a cheap ham radio. But hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, and Michelle Triola, like a screeching, squealing, rapacious swamp sow, is after actor Lee Marvin's last $3 million. I guess what you and Michelle are saying is that when you're on your backs, the meter is running. Well, please spare us, gals, and tell us the rates at the top. Then we can choose which two-bit tarts and bargain basement sluts to shack up with.
That's the news. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
Sorry, it's rare when you get to directly segue to a classic SNL bit as a point of reference and context. When that shit comes along, you fucking include it. Then, in 1978, a bolt of lightning struck the clock tower at CBS headquarters, sending Andy Rooney screaming to 60 Minutes. I tried to wedge a Back to the Future reference in there for some reason. I don't know why I did that. I saw it on TV the other day. Just forget it. In 1978, Andy is given a segment at the end of the show to cover for the hiatus counterpoint segment that was on there. They put him in at the end to fill in for it because they were on hiatus for the summer. As it happens, people like little pissed off men behind desks complaining about things. So when it was time to bring counterpoint back, they would alternate between it and Andy Rooney's stuff. You know, 1 week this, the next week that. You know, 1 week people bitching, and then eventually it proved that people liked Andy's brand of wine. Pun. Whatever. They liked his whining more. And then couples whining at each other. So the rest is history, more or less. His segment titled A Few Minutes with Andy Rooney featured his distinct style of observational humor and social commentary. Rooney's commentaries covered a whole range of topics, from everyday annoyances to political and cultural issues. His dry wit and acerbic style resonated with viewers, and he became one of the most recognizable and beloved figures on television. He remained a fixture on 60 Minutes for over 3 decades. His commentaries often took a critical stance, challenging common assumptions, and offered a unique perspective on various subjects. Then, after only 12 years on the job, the 1990s came in and smacked the shit out of Andy Rooney. Or he started to become a basic-assed old white man, racking up the stereotypical curmudgeonly controversies, as one does. Back in the early 90s, Andy had some problems with pissing off large groups of the human race, as it would seem, specifically the Native American people, African American people, and the LGBTQ plus American people. As all old people are prone to do from time to time. Take for instance, in my case, New Yorkers. What is with all these New Yorkers being bloodthirsty, soulless murder husks, whose only joy in life is spilling the blood of anyone who comes near them? I mean, really, what is the benefit, New Yorkers? You can't sell Statue Liberty tchotchkes to people scared you'll murder them with them, can you? What are you going to do with all the Hamilton tickets that people are afraid to buy? Sell them to fellow murderers? That's not very realistic. Oh, okay, I'll stop. Though in my defense, the all New Yorkers, old and young, are ravenous murderers bit is entirely true and has been proven time and time again with inscrutable data, and everyone knows it. Andy's offenses were against, well, almost everyone, including the mindless, godless kill machines that are New Yorkers. I mean, okay, I'm kidding. I'm sorry, New Yorkers. You're an outstanding group of millions of people, not all of whom want to murder everyone in sight. I should stop doing this old bit from The Perfect Episode, but I think I'm just too far into it now, and I'm kind of in a sunk cost fallacy kind of thing at this point. back to Andy Rooney pissing off the whole wide world. Andy fucked with the Native American community by saying more or less that they're butthurt that the country was taken from them. And they need to get over it because they're not getting it back. Not kidding. The impetus of this comment was the growing dislike of nationally recognized teams for national sports using mascot and team names like, Redskins. And then that being offensive to Native Americans, which it is. It's a shame that no one ever took Andy on about this and turned it around on him and maybe asked him if instead of naming the team the Redskins, what if instead they named the team the Whitey Cousin Fuckers and the mascot would just, be a regular white dude. And then ask Andy what he wants to blame his hurt feelings on after that happened. He also implied that Native Americans did not have a rich culture or contribute much to society. His remarks drew widespread backlash, as, of course it would, from the Native American advocacy groups and others who found his comments insensitive and disrespectful because, they were. Rooney faced criticism for his remarks, and CBS News issued an apology on his behalf. Rooney himself also expressed regret for his comments and issued an apology, acknowledging that his words were offensive and also acknowledging the importance of Native American culture and history. Then he double fucked himself by double fucking with African Americans and the LGBTQ plus folks. Here's a little bit about that from the LA Times. Quote, I hate that. 60 Minutes commentator Andy Rooney was suspended for 3 months without pay by CBS News on Thursday following remarks about blacks and gays attributed to him in The Advocate, which is a gay magazine based in Los Angeles. Quote, I have made it clear that CBS News cannot tolerate such remarks or anything that approximates such comments since they in no way reflect the views of this organization, unquote. CBS News President David Burke said in a statement released after he met with Rooney. Rooney, 71, who previously had come under fire from homosexual rights groups for remarks about gays and AIDS in a CBS TV special in December, also is quoted as saying, while he felt that gays have been the victims of prejudice, he found the homosexual act, quote, repugnant, unquote, and homosexuality, quote, not normal, unquote. Fucking, wow. He confirmed he had written a controversial letter to the magazine commenting on gays in response to criticisms of his views on homosexuality. Quote, I am guilty of what I said about gays, and I deeply regret having offended them, Rooney said. But on the other charge, I am absolutely innocent. I never made any remark about blacks having watered down their genes. I never made or thought the statement attributed to me. I am just infuriated by the notion that I am being called a racist. Anyone who knows me knows that that is not true. Here is where shit gets introspective for me, and I start to wonder if I, too, do incredibly stupid shit like this, and just not know it. Like I turn this on myself, and maybe I do a little self-analysis, and I really wonder. I see other people fuck up like this, and I wonder, do I do the same thing? Okay, let me explain. First with an analogy, all right? Then I'll use Andy's actual watered down quote explanation. Okay, so if I explain it, then maybe you'll wonder if you do it too. Okay, so imagine a blind man wants to paint an apple. He has the canvas in front of him, and he just goes to town, and in his mind, he paints a perfect apple. He calls you a he calls you to come in, and he calls you and says, "Hey, come check this out," and you tell him, "Nah, man, it's just a fucking mess on a canvas. It looks like the colors red and green had a fight, and neither of them won." However, the blind guy, he's not convinced. In his mind, that apple is pristine, and that maybe you're just not seeing it right, or maybe you have never seen an apple before. Maybe that's it. Some such other explanation, other than it not being a perfect apple on that canvas. Are you with me so far? Kind of, maybe? Okay, now here's Andy's actual watered down quote thing. Again, it's from the LA Times article. According to Rooney, his remarks about race came in a discussion with the Advocate reporter about education. Quote, he said that a lot of people don't know much about homosexuality, and I said there were a lot of problems with education, and not only schools but kids. I said that one of our problems is that some of the least fit among us are proliferating. In big city schools, you have kids dropping out of 7th grade, and then those kids having babies, making for a society of people that don't go through schools. In most cases, those are black kids. In West Virginia, it's white kids. It looks like a racial comment, but it's not. See, now, I know that's racist as fuck. It plainly just is. Just the fact that he said, in most cases, those are black kids, which means most black kids generally. Then he tries a bit of evening out by saying, in West Virginia, it's white kids. Did you get that? All black kids everywhere versus white kids in West Virginia. Yet, here's the thing. I honestly don't believe that Andy believed it to be racist. Like, he didn't do it knowingly to disparage black folks or anybody. He was just saying shit he believed to be true, and again, I believe he thought it was something that needed to be fixed, Like, if you saw that one area of town constantly catching fire, you would want to help and call attention to it. I think that's what Andy was thinking here. He didn't hear the blatantly obvious racism in his statement, which leads me to wonder, do I do shit like that? Like, generally, on other topics? Or hell, so, like maybe even stuff about race too? Now I'm paranoid about everything. I think to myself, now, like, have I done it already? Do I do it regularly? And not know it or believe something as truth just out of hand, and then I just spew it all out and it's obviously wrong to everyone around me? I have to reevaluate everything. What the fuck? To end this portion, I'll leave you with the last line from the article, which reads, he added that he had participated in sit-ins against racial discrimination when he was in the military during the 1940s. With regard to his remarks about gays, though, Andy Rooney said, quote, I feel very badly if I did anything to make their lives more difficult. I think gays have been prejudiced against. I am not gay, and I am puzzled by gays. Anyway, Andy pissed off gay folks, Native Americans, and African Americans in the 90s. He was just puzzled when he insulted them. No biggie, No biggie. What's a big deal? This wasn't the only controversy that Andy would trip and fall his ass into. Sure, racist, homophobe screeds against large swaths of your audience is one thing. A blisteringly stupid thing, but it's one thing. Alienating any future additions to your audience is a whole other thing. It's a whole other thing entirely, right? Taking a figurative dump, on the suicidal end to what would be dubbed the quote, the voice of his generation, unquote, is the controversy that Andy is most remembered for. Do you know how bad your take on a subject has to be for it to overshadow calling black folks genetically watered down dummies? Or Native Americans, calling them crybabies for not liking the racism used against them? Or gay folks for choosing a self-inflicted sexually transmitted plague? Well, his bizarre screed about Kurt Cobain did just that. Why it overshadowed all that other shit, I really don't know. But it's what happened. What a fucked up world we inhabit. You know what I mean? The controversial statement involving Kurt Cobain. Yep, that Kurt Cobain. Well, are there other Kurt Cobains in the world? I mean, there has to be, right? A quick sidebar here. The name Kurt Cobain. Well, first, there are 0.09 people named Cobain for every 100,000 Americans. I looked that up. That's according to a website. It's according to a website called mynamestats.com. Based on the U.S. Census Bureau data that estimated the population of people named Cobain, it is 159. 11.67% of all people named Cobain have the given name of Kurt Cobain. So if you run the numbers through the magic of Google, that's 17 people in the whole of the United States named Kurt Cobain. And I thought being saddled with Elton was a tiny sliver of hell. I can't imagine being 17 people. Those 17 people with the name Kurt Cobain now. In a world where people name their kids after purse companies and shoes and rappers and then misspell the names just badly. Maybe the Kurtz and I aren't in as bad a spot as I think. So, for those unfamiliar with who Kurt Cobain was, he was born on February 20th, 1967 in Aberdeen, Washington. He was the lead singer and guitarist of the influential rock band Nirvana. He became a symbol of the 90s grunge movement with the release of the groundbreaking album Nevermind in 1991. Despite the immense success that they attained, Cobain struggled with personal demons, and his life ended tragically with his death by suicide on April 5th, 1994. Cobain has since become a musical, cultural icon of sorts and endures as one of the most celebrated and enigmatic figures in the history of rock music. So, the untimely, tragic end of Kurt Cobain back in 1994 was and is seen as a great loss across the board. Unless you're maybe a sociopath or a murder fetishist, or you really, really, really didn't like grunge punk music, or you're apparently Andy Rooney, as he chose to have this hot take regarding it. When Kurt Cobain died, Andy recorded what is probably his most famous rant. I'll play the thing just so you can hear how fucked up it is. See if you can catch where he went wrong.
You know the world has passed you by when your newspaper carries a page-one story about the death of someone you never heard of. It happened to me this week. All the papers had it. Kurt Cobain, this story says, who helped to create the grunge rock sound that has dominated popular music, was found dead at his home. Mr. Cobain, lead singer, guitarist, and songwriter for the influential band Nirvana, killed himself with a shotgun blast to his head. It isn't bad enough I never heard of Kurt Cobain. I never heard of grunge rock or Nirvana either. The story says grunge rock is the noisy, icon-smashing spawn of punk rock. Kurt Cobain's death at age 27 doesn't sadden me. It angers me. He must have been a talented person. A lot of people would like to have the years left that he threw away. I'd like to have them. And what's all this nonsense about how terrible life is? A young girl who stood outside his home in Seattle with tears streaming down her face said, "It's hard to be a young person nowadays. He helped open people's eyes to our struggles." Please wipe the tears from your eyes, dear. You're breaking my heart. I'd love to relieve the pain you're going through by switching my age for yours. What would all these young people be doing if they had real problems like a depression, World War II, or Vietnam? Do they work at all? Are they contributing anything to the world they're taking so much from? Everything about Kurt Cobain makes me suspicious. This picture shows him in a pair of jeans with a hole in the knee. I doubt that Kurt Cobain ever did enough work to wear a hole in his pants. Probably had 10 pairs just like these hanging in his closet. All this fake stuff makes me suspicious of his music. No one's art is better than the person who creates it. If Kurt Cobain applied the same brain to his music that he applied to his drug-infested life, it's reasonable to think that his music may not have made much sense either. On a back page of the same newspaper with the Kurt Cobain story, there's an obituary of Samuel E. Thorne, who died at the age of 87. Professor Thorne was a retired legal historian at Harvard. Mr. Thorne, the obituary said, was an authority on English legal history dating to the 12th century. During World War II, he was a Navy cryptanalyst in the Pacific. He is survived by 2 sons and his wife of 50 years. I'd like to suggest we save our tears for Professor Thorne.
Did you hear the fucked up part? Well, it wasn't the "I don't know who Kurt Cobain is" parts, okay? Because, of course, that's bound to happen, right? Not everyone was into that kind of music or up on the zeitgeist of the time. So, hey, I get it. I don't really know Dua Lipa or what she's doing or what's happening in rock, actually, and what's going on in rap today. I don't know that shit. From what I've gathered and heard, it seems like rap gave up on itself. But whatever. I'm old, just like Andy was old, though I'm not the same amount of old that Andy was at that time. But still, it's understandable to eventually become out of touch with new stuff. All new stuff. Andy can be forgiven for being out of touch. He absolutely shit the bed everywhere else in that clip, though. Like, money and fame. It's a great substitute for depression and addiction. Just be happy about making all the money you can. Problem solved, folks. Money equals happiness, more or less. This Mental Health Minute was brought to you by Andy Rooney, who would like to remind you that he knows fuck all about mental health, but everything else about alienating his viewing audience. Yeah, he received a lot of backlash for that one. So for those keeping track at home, he shit on black folks, Native American folks, gay folks, and young people. Well, okay, mostly white young folks, but, you know. And as a whipped cream on top, he shit on people with depression-heavy mental health issues and their families. Is that everybody? Everybody? Almost. I was waiting to run across some, nail-in-the-coffin screed like, "What's with all these intellectually disabled people? It's like they all have some kind of special needs that have to be met, a concession afforded to them because they happen to be born different. Did anyone ever think that maybe they're just not trying hard enough? Maybe instead of everyone getting all empathetic and compassionate, we should just be telling them to put in more effort. To act like everyone who wasn't born like they were. Hey, Paul, instead of helping that person with their math or altering the way information is taught to better suit the individual, perhaps a good kick in the rump and smacking them about the head with that math textbook would do more for him than your petty sympathies. And if that doesn't work, maybe we can just hide them in the attic somewhere and only let them downstairs on holidays. They'll never learn to be like everyone else if we let them keep thinking they're not like everyone else." I'm Andy Rooney. Alright, I'll quit the gross absurdity. Still, to be fair, on Andy's part, when he fucked up, he owned it. Sort of. Regardless. Spoilers? He's also very dead. So, if anything, his definitely wrong opinions about some stuff are relegated to time capsule tidbits that will remind people in the future to not think like that anymore, because, it's wrong. Be more decent to each other, and not like old Andy and his weird angles. But also, we can pick over his work and discard the bits we don't like, like we do with everything else from the past, like Michael Jackson. And teaching the slavery bits in American history classes. And the Bible. The Bible. But let's leave this separation of artist from their art controversy/discussion for a later discussion. Oh, just real quick, before I move on from that. Pablo Picasso was a misogynist, woman-beating prick who fucked an underage girl while he was in his 40s. Happy Googling, folks.
Boom, slap, pow, schnicked. Sorry for the onomatopoeia, folks. And sorry for the ad break. You get it. We love you.
Okay, back to Andy. Andy Rooney would later retire from regularly appearing on the show 60 Minutes in 2011 at the age of 92, having delivered more than 1,000 commentaries during his tenure. 1,000! Have you ever done 1,000 of anything? That's crazy talk. Still, he did, and wow. In addition to his work on television, Andy was also a prolific writer. He authored several books, one of which I have. Others included Common Nonsense, Sincerely Andy Rooney, and Years of Minutes, which compiled many of his 60 Minutes commentaries. I don't have those, but the one I do have is a compilation of his 60 Minutes essays. His writing style was characterized by his ability to find humor and insight in the ordinary and mundane aspects of life, which I think was actually kind of special. I'll explain why I feel that way in just a bit. Andy Rooney received numerous accolades throughout his career, including multiple Emmy Awards and a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. He was known for his independent thinking, unapologetic opinions, and his ability to connect with audiences through his candid and often relatable observations. Sadly, as I mentioned before, Andy Rooney passed away on November 4th, 2011, at the age of 92. His contributions to journalism and television continue to be remembered and appreciated, as he left an indelible mark on the industry with his distinctive voice and insightful commentary. Now, the book I have, which is titled, A Few Minutes with Andy Rooney. It's like I said, it's a collection of essays that Andy read on air over the years. Some of them have actual air dates written by them, and some of them don't. I don't get why, but regardless, they are a masterclass in bitching. The guy is amazing, and personally, I never put too much thought into how Andy Rooney did what he did. When I watched it when I was a kid, I used to catch his bit on 60 Minutes and think, fuck, this guy complains a lot. Never once giving a thought as to how he wasn't fumble fucking over every word, like I do when I do this thing. Though I can't say I thought he just came up with it off the top of his head either. Still, I never thought he would write it all out and it would sound exactly like he speaks. You know what I mean? I watched a ton of interviews of Andy Rooney, and when he's off the cuff, it tracks with how he delivered his segments on 60 Minutes. Take, for instance, this bit about porches in the essay called On the House. I'm not going to do the Andy Rooney impersonation. I'm terrible at it, and so I'm just going to read the part, and you can kind of hear just anyway. Quote, "People see more backyard than front porch-oriented now. They're turning their backs on a world they used to face. They're looking for privacy, hiding behind fences. What used to go on the front porch is taking place out back, now behind the fence around the patio. People seem to miss their front porch, too. You see them inventing makeshift substitutes. There's something satisfying about sitting out in front of your very own home, watching the world go by. It's your house, and there you are, out in front of it. You're available to be seen and can in turn watch the passing parade or just sit there, reading the paper, if there's no parade. A porch made a perfect first step away from home for a young child too young to cross the street. Wheeled toys rolled there in the rain, and on hot summer evenings, young lovers rocked in their own breeze. That's damn near poetry. Unquote. Fucking Jesus. That's damn near poetry, isn't it? In a quaint, matter-of-fact kind of way, you know? Still, I can hear his voice saying it in my head, and it's weird. Also, who can go on that long about porches? That guy could fill an hour on how dog shit smelled. That, in and of itself, is amazing. Of course, he had his own opinions on shit. I mean, not actual shit. I didn't find anything about that. And I looked. On a different point, Andy seemed to try and keep everything as even keel as an old, mostly conservative-sounding, at times, self-described liberal white guy who was a World War II veteran could. Which, by all accounts, is a hard-ass thing to do. Old guys have opinions, and loud ones, but rarely do they deliver them evenly, you know, or even try to. At least Andy gave that a shot for the most part. I mean, privately, I'm guessing he thought everybody who wasn't him or older was a drug-toting hippie or warmonger, hell-bent on selling the world for one more Grateful Dead tour and a chance to meet Frank Zappa, or willingly turn it all over to Coca-Cola to enslave. Which reminds me, this episode is sponsored by Coca-Cola, who would like to remind you that they care about saving you money on the products you love so much they've attempted to silence exploited workers. Hundreds of employees were detained and tortured by paramilitary groups in Colombia in order to prevent them from unionizing. So, keep that in mind next time you crack into a refreshing Coca-Cola brand soft drink. Refreshing. Drink. Coca-Cola.
Oh, my God! Elton! Are you freaking allergic to money or something? Were you groped by a corporation at some point? I mean, wow!
Well, I think figuratively. We all have been at some point.
See, now it's times like these that I'm kind of glad that dead or conjured dead. Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to pander for ad buys.
Yet. Moving on. Just for the record, by the way, not sponsored by Coke, nor ever will be, given the groundwork you just heard me laying down. And if you'll allow me to go back and linger on another point I made. I still don't understand Frank Zappa, and I tried. Many of my friends over the years, after his time, they tried to get me into his shit for years, and it just never took. You know? Zappa. What, wait. Why am I talking about Frank Zappa? Fuck.
Probably because Zappa was the last truly great American artist and songsmith of the 20th century. That's why.
Alonzo, where did you come from?
Huh? Oh, I've been here the whole time. Just standing behind you, you know, watching.
Why would you do that? Why? Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
I don't know. Hey, did I ever tell you that they kicked me out of the bus depot?
Yep.
For life. Yeah, exactly. You know, can you believe that shit, man?
I really have no idea what to think about any of that.
Yeah, well, get this. When I used to hang out down there before, you know, before the great excision of Lonzo from the Depot, man, it stings just talking about it. Anyway, I used to listen to a lot of Zappa over there, me and this guy named Spirit. Oh, that guy, man. He was one weird dude. Hey, did I ever tell you about that guy called Spirit?
Nope. And I'm good. Don't need to know.
Listen, long story short, he could crap in a perfect spiral. Perfect spiral.
I'm moving on. I'm moving on now. The book consists of essays written by Andy for 60 minutes. Basically, it's doubling down on content money, old school style. I don't blame him. I'm surprised he didn't take the audio and release them as records, vinyl records, because Andy Rooney's career was, during ancient times. Then back then he could have resold them during the cassette tape boom, and then later CDs, and then after CDs, Napster, and then a podcast, for the Apple Store, and then streaming, maybe on some kind of Netflix kind of thing. He might still be getting paid to this day. Oh, what cruel fate for Andy's money to not predict the rise of the internet. Why, Andy? Why? Also, you can stream Andy Rooney's segments on Paramount Plus, which I think I have, actually. I mean, I have the app. I haven't streamed the segments. So many of these fucking services now, I'm basically paying for cable all over again. Or was it satellite? You know what I mean. It's all the same fucking price.
You've completely set your own narrative on fire and are just peeing on the ashes at this point, right? Andy Rooney is rolling over in his grave.
I think Andy is still too busy complaining to worry about what I have to say or being peed on. What does that mean, anyway?
It means forget about it and keep this dumpster fire burning.
I thought I peed on the fire.
Oh, just keep it burning, for the love of God.
Right. I'll keep it burning. The essays included in the book are a little dated, sure, but they're a brilliant snapshot of a time when shit seemed like it was just hectic. But by today's standards, we're probably at a snail's pace in comparison. Like, take for instance Andy's piece about signs. He basically breaks down our general feelings about signs we see out in public, ending with the line, quote, "The matter of the fact is, most of us don't like to be told anything by a sign," unquote. Which, I mean, compared to today, do you give a shit about signs? Well, enough to decide whether you like or dislike being told anything by them? I don't. But Andy did. He goes on about how some signs are polite and try to sweet-talk you into not smoking. Quote, "Thank you for not smoking," unquote. Remember those days? Back when smoking was so prevalent that the areas you couldn't smoke in were the ones that were in the minority. Good times, man. Sometimes I miss having a smoke. Oh. I mean, don't smoke, kids. If there are any listening, which according to the demographic marketing data, there aren't. But regardless, Andy's stuff can read like it's from a slightly odd, slowed-down universe where a guy could wander around, and really devote some thought and emotional context to how he felt about how a sign was really making him feel, and have everyone reading and listening or watching and could kind of relate to him. In today's fast-paced world of needless garbage constantly being shoveled at us, it's kind of hard to think about something as easily missed as signs. I mean, other than for identifying shit or quick directional information. Does anyone really ever notice a sign or are pissed by its messaging? I mean, via these essays, it feels like back when they were written, there was time to notice, But also, no one during that time did either. I mean, I'm alluding to what I think is the hidden genius of Andy Rooney. His subjects and his curmudgeonly delivery that I never realized was at work until I read this book. He kind of pulls a magic trick on everyone. Well, back then it was the viewer, and I guess later in his books, the reader too. Here. Take, for instance, this piece on counters, as in, countertops, or more accurately, retail countertops. It basically describes various counters you've seen in stores your whole life. In supermarkets, department stores, drugstores, counters filled with crap. Or in this case, the counters leading up to the cashiers. I guess those count too. Or did. Who knows? Still, Andy Rooney operates under the guise of the everyman, saying, quote, I'm the all-American consumer. My idea of a good time is to go out Saturday morning to buy something with some of the money I've made, unquote. See, just a run-of-the-mill guy doing run-of-the-mill things, when suddenly a world of cluttered counters and retail spaces invades his world. So he cranks up the cranky and says, quote, it's because they're always trying to sell us just one more item before we get out of the door, unquote. Never mind that at the beginning of the thing, he was proud to consume. And there, I think, was the giveaway for me as to what Andy Rooney is really doing in all of these tirades about random, ordinary stuff. Stuff like the items that get crowded around the cash registers. Those impulse items that have been everywhere since cash registers first rang, or, swallowed our money whole. One of those. Still, Andy leaves the piece with, quote, my question is this. If they want us to buy, why don't they make it easier for us to pay? Unquote. Which, if you think about it, is just nonsense. But I think Andy realizes that. And he does it on purpose. Now, my favorite essay, the peace thing in the book, is about D-Day. Like I mentioned earlier, Andy was there, albeit 4 days after the initial invasion. The beaches were still bombed from afar by Nazis, but still, he walked through that bit of history in the first person. This particular piece is about the remembrance of D-Day, particularly those of us who can only read about it. He writes about it in what I feel is a pandering, kind of overly romanticized way, which I get. He's a writer, so yeah. Plus, he was there. He earned the right to talk any way he wants about it. Still, he goes on to describe what people witnessed that day. It gets pretty graphic, like this part near the beginning. Quote, no one can tell the whole story of D-Day. Each of the 60,000 men who waded ashore that day knew a little part of the story too well. To them, the landing looked like a catastrophe. Each knew a friend shot through the throat, shot through the knee. Each knew the first names of 5 hanging dead on the barbed wire offshore. 3 who lay unattended on the beach as the blood drained from the holes in their bodies. They knew whole tank crews drowned when the tanks were unloaded in 20 feet of water. Unquote. Holy fuck, Andy. That's some vivid shit. That on its own is just amazing writing. Yet it's the bit in the end that for me unlocked the beautiful trick Andy played on his audience for decades, and they loved him for it. He describes going to visit Normandy numerous times and crying when he goes. He describes a battleground guide saying to tourists, quote, here they fought the bloody battle for the beach. The guide talks on with a pointer in his hand to a busload of people about events that never happened in a place they never were. Then Andy adds, quote, how would anyone know that John Lacey died in that clump of weeds by the wagon path as he looked to his left towards Simpson and caught a bullet behind the ear? And if there had been a picture of it, and there weren't any, it wouldn't have shown that Lacey was the only one who carried apples for the guys in his raincoat pocket. If you think the world is rotten, go to the cemetery at Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer on the hill overlooking the beach. See what one group of men did for another. D-Day, June 6th, 1944. Unquote. That's just powerful, isn't it? Descriptive and powerful. I believe it's also a great example of the crux of Andy Rooney's entire career. He started by lying his way into a reporting career. Then, he reported what he saw in the most direct way, describing something so they would know about it. Then Andy's career turned into commentary, but he kept that spirit and adjusted it ever so slightly to something else, something that I believe is just as powerful. I think that Andy understood that people like to hear people complain, even though they say they don't. He took that and used it to trick people into doing something that they tend to not do, which is to pay attention. He would choose a topic to talk about that seemed banal, and through the guise of complaint, he got people to notice and appreciate the world around them, to stop and not only smell the roses they walk by every day, but to take in the color, texture, and beauty of it. Only it was a concept like factory work or signs. The world we take for granted. He tricked people into taking just a few minutes to see it again and notice it, if only briefly. How beautiful is that? Sure, Andy Rooney had his fair share of missteps, but on the whole, he managed to pull people's focus onto things like how the government pays for things, like technical manuals and stuff, or how varied and different restaurants are. And he did it in a way that sounded like something people secretly love to hear, complaining. It's kind of amazing if you think about it. So for all his faults, I can only say thanks, Andy, for pointing out all the fascinating beauty in parts of the world I missed. And I'll try not to let that happen so often. And when I do, I'll be sure to complain about it loudly. Usually, I would end the episode right here, with a little thank you for listening. But after watching all the Andy Rooney clips and 60 Minutes stuff, I was inspired. So, to end this episode, I'm going to do it 60 Minutes style, kind of, with the help of a friend named Lemon McNally. Lemon, a veteran comedy writer of both stage and small screen, will be joining me for a few episodes, giving them an Andy Rooney kind of send-off, if that's what they can be called, I guess. He's going to drop a segment at the end of the next few episodes, and, we'll see how it goes, see how it works out. So, without further ado, here is a new segment for Elton Reads a Book a Week, tentatively titled, When Life Gives You Lemon.
Whiskey, the burning fun time drink of sad clowns everywhere, gets a bad rap. To be honest, I feel almost personally slighted by its bad reputation because, you see, whiskey is like milk to me. That is, if milk were like water, and water was what helped me forget the pain of existing in a world where my ex-wife still breathes. Look, I'm not sure if you know this, but there's a certain unpleasant stigma that's been attached to whiskey. My theory as to why that stigma exists goes something like this, and before you feel the compulsion to cast judgment, understand that my theory is rooted in science, in-depth internet deep dives, and not entirely unrelated absinthe hallucinations. My theory is thus: whiskey gets people drunk faster, it doesn't give you a buzz like beer or wine, and it's been denigrated by the deep pockets of big beer and vintners. Unfortunately, I'm not here to spread the goddamn truth, I know. I'm not, lest I have a coincidental nasty tumble down a flight of stairs at the hand of some mislaid beer can wine bottle combo. I'm not looking to tangle with beer barons and their wine-slinging counterparts, no sir. Though, between you and me, their stranglehold on the booze industry is the reason why whiskey is more expensive. But that marketing sham backfires because everyone worth a hangover knows that the more expensive, the more better. It's economics, so it's better suck at wine. But don't just take it from me, a guy named after the best citrus fruit on the planet, okay? You can look at the history of whiskey, it's all right there. It's been used for medicinal purposes, it's been a staple of many cultures the world over, and nowadays it's becoming more popular in cocktails and mixed drinks for people that were sent by Satan himself to annoy me in bars. So yeah, Do I think whiskey deserves a little more respect than it's been given? Yeah, you're damn right I do. Apparently, it's the alcoholic drink of choice among bad cowboys everywhere or something like that. I know for sure it's what all the villains drink in the movies. You know, when they're plotting to kill Christmas. Or, okay, the assassination of the hero of the story, or both. Usually both. How whiskey's sweet face got wrapped up in all that? I don't know. It's always been good to me. Always there. My best chest-warming friend that tastes like mommy's kisses. Like a welcoming, soothing, and comforting finish to a day filled with a world I'd rather see stripped down naked and fired into the sun than deal with. God bless you, whiskey. Maybe all the bad rep comes from whiskey being the youngest addition to the liquid courage family. It's only been around since the 13th century, and even that was made from wine distilled by monks. So, not even straight-up whiskey. Whiskey that I know, love, and goddamn cherish, but it's in its family. Oh, and for those of you playing along and getting plastered at home, that distilled wine the monks made is called brandy today. That's the distilled spirit, not a girl named after the drink, or the one that works laying whiskey down. She's a fine girl. Also, the term brandy originates from the word brandewijn, which is Dutch for burnt wine. Yeah, and you thought the Dutch were only good for farting under a blanket and trapping you inside it. Evidence of the earliest production of whiskey comes from an entry in the Exchequer Rolls for 1495, where malt is sent, quote, to Friar John Core by order of the king to make aqua vitae, end quote. Aqua vita is an archaic name for a concentrated aqueous solution of ethanol. The kind they're talking about was brandy. And it was for, quote, enough to make about 500 bottles, end quote. That was back in Scotty ol' Scotland, because if you're going to toy around with making whiskey, make 500 fucking bottles of it. That's some sound-ass solid advice. Write that down. Still, whiskey being one of the youngest brain-damaged juices on the block should make it hip, not bad, right? Who wants to party with old man Vino and his sloppy, stupid geriatric cousin, I don't know, fucking Biro, when you've got motorcycle-wrecking whiskey stumbling up your porch steps? Why roll with the senior citizens of liver enlarging when you can party with the youngest brain-damaged juice on the block? Know what I mean, right? Can I get a witness? Yeah, that didn't come out right at all. Did it? No, it did not. Shit, I didn't even fucking sing it like you're supposed to. What the fuck is wrong with me? I'm just not young and hip enough. No, I'm not whiskey enough to pull that off. What was I thinking? So I'm just going to pretend that didn't happen, and then, I'll just whiskey myself to forget it, and hopefully never let that happen again. See? Because that's the beauty of whiskey. It's got a proven track record as a memory eraser, among other things. I mean, when has that never been handy, right? Plus, did you notice what year the brandy, almost whiskey, was made? That was at the end of medieval times. Okay, hear me out. I'm not saying whiskey brought about the Renaissance, but also prove it didn't. You can't. Sure. Some might say it's a coincidence, but still others might say, fuck you. What do you know about it? Mind your own fucking business. It started the Renaissance, dummy. Speaking of other people and coincidences, it just so happens that people get drunk faster on whiskey than other alcoholic beverages. It takes around 4 to 5 shots of whiskey for an average-sized person to get drunk, as opposed to drinking gallons of the other liquid surprise pregnancy makers. There isn't some lame buildup of buzz while you spend an hour pissing in the parking lot like beer gives you, or wake up in a strange ditch, nowhere near the town you live in, like wine gives you. No, sir, and the beer and wine people goddamn know it. Now, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but I mean, come on, it's gotta be, right? Some shadowy cabal of brewmeisters and vintners in a room somewhere plotting against cool kid whiskey. Of course, I'm not here on this podcast to spread conspiracy theories. And certainly, I'm not here to spread the goddamn truth, am I? Anheuser-Busch. don't you send your whiskey-silencing goons after me. Sure, now you might say, look, Lemon, beer is cheap and wine is, fucking sophisticated or some such shit, Lemon. It's what the goddamn grown-ups drink to look refined while making bad life choices, and I fall into both of those groups on any given weekend. Lighten up. Yeah, I get it. To that I say, whiskey is the drink of people that know what the fuck they're doing and how to get it done right. Seriously, just look at how it's priced. It's usually priced just out of the range of those cheap beer chumps looking for a way to piss way more than get drunk. And whiskey is too strong for those wine-chugging soccer moms to hide in their insulated mugs at little Jimmy's practice. "It's just Mommy's special fruit juice, Jimmy, that's all," she says. Yeah, whatever, Mom. Just try and keep it on the road, huh? Whiskey is what people who want to get fucking shit-faced drink to get fucking shit-faced because they know what they're doing. It's not for playing games, but it's reasonably accessible to people who are serious about their brain numbing. It's the drinking people's drink that they drink when they want to get drunk. Wait. I said that right. Look, if you look at the history of whiskey, it's all right there. It's been used for medicinal purposes. It's been a staple of many cultures throughout history. It ended the medieval period and basically sponsored the Renaissance. Probably. You can't prove it didn't. And with hipsters, it's being used to make more dumb-assed cocktails than ever. Sure, the people that drink that shit were sent here by Satan himself to annoy the ever-loving fuck out of me in bars. Drink your whiskey neat, you fucking wax-mustachioed weaklings. But, if their sad attempts at originality is what it takes to make whiskey more palatable to the masses, it's a small price to pay. I'll just drink my way through it. So yeah, let's give whiskey its due and, other than completely ruining people's lives, ending marriages, obliterating healthy childhoods, and all the vehicular homicide. What has it ever done to you? I think it deserves a little more respect. Fuck. I need a drink now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Elton Reads a Book a Week. If you liked it, please consider contributing to the Patreon for it. The link is in the description down there or around wherever you'll find it. You can find more content over there, and we can talk one on one another, and you can help me pick books for future episodes and all that kind of stuff, or suggest stuff, for me to put on the Patreon even. I'll give you stuff. And you can also buy the book for this episode that this episode is about, and any other episodes that the books, you can do that via the special Amazon link in the description, though I might be changing that to a different link, whatever. You can buy it down there or around there in the description. There's a link to the book, is what I'm saying. If you do that, I get a little kickback from it. They toss a little money my way. I'd appreciate that. If you're not able to contribute in either of those ways, why not share this podcast with a friend or a group or social media thing or whatever? Make a Snapchat about it. That'd be neat. Liking and subscribing helps a lot with that too on the podcast apps or just social media, all that stuff. Spreading the word really does help. Spread the word and gets more listeners and whatnot and keeps this thing going. You can follow the podcast and all the social media stuff too. That link will also be in the description below. Above all else, though, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. It's not a joke. I really do. And please, this week, try reading a book. For real. Don't let them die out. Okay? Huh? Right? Huh? Thank you. Bye.
Beer is cheap and wine is, fucking sophisticated or some such shit.